Steve, welcome to the show, man.
I appreciate being here.
I really should say welcome back to the show.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe how long it's been. Like you just said, 7 years ago. Well, so congratulations to you too, to even have a podcast that long, right? That here we are again, and so much life. So there's so many new things to talk about. I appreciate being here with you, brother.
Dude, it's and we'll get into why you're here, but obviously staying connected on social media, social media is a gift and a curse, right? I get to see all the things, but you end up, all the bad things come from social media too. But I've been watching your journey, and you've been through some hardships over the last couple. Has it been a couple years now?
It will be. So August will be 2 years. So we're just under 2 years from the time recording this. Yeah,
which is crazy.
22
and
months.
Which is a journey, and we're going to get into it and how you were able to overcome so much. But I just want to point out, so we're creeping up on episode 500 on this podcast. You were episode 22. So we're going way back. It was August 1st, 2016 was the release of the show. We actually met, I think, at a One Life conference in Westchester.
Yes.
And just so much has changed in both of our lives since then. But I still remember our conversation from 7 years ago, and you were discussing, obviously, and you still talk about this, but work-life balance, right? And the importance of it, and not losing sight of what's important. And the funny thing is, I don't know if it was because of our conversation, or it clearly got stuck in the back of my head. So shout out to you. I don't work many days past 2 p.m. I'm very dedicated to the family. I'm now married. That has changed as well in the last 7 years. I'm now married, have 2 stepkids, and so I'm there for them more than my businesses, and it's such a blessing, dude. But why don't we talk about who Steve is today, and then we're going to talk how we got there.
That's great, and it's on point with what you said. One of my trademarks is more business, more life. I think when I was growing up, it was an either or. It was like either you're going to be really successful and make money, and you're going to have to sacrifice time and other things, or you're going to be poor and you can have abundance of time and be with people, but you're not going to have the funds. And so I guess who I am now is the A-N-D in this, that we can have both, that we can have our abundance and the life that we want. And it's by design. So typically I work with C-level executives, mostly CEO founders, because this is an idea at the top. And then basically they've created a socially conscious endeavor. There's something they care about. So they end up working a lot, just like I did. We love what we do, but then you wake up and you're like, I don't have the life I want. So that's where the magic comes into my life. And I live this, I'm a family man myself. So how do I continue to be that family man and have other things that are important to me too, like music and even learning farming right now? I've got a 20 by 24 greenhouse, and we're gardening. But how do you do those things and still have your businesses run? And that's where it's more business is all systems to be able to eliminate, delegate, and automate so that we can work less than 40 hours a week. So that's my desire, Justin, is that people are working less than 40 hours in their work activities, and then they're spending an abundance of time living. And I guess to cap it all off, the clients we've been working with are making millions more. Literally, some of them double, triple their business because you work smart. It forces you to work smarter. So that's my job. And it's been life-changing for me and others. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah, man, I love it. And so I want to, obviously, people who are watching this, I want to point out the massive physical difference in you, and it's the gigantic beard that you've grown. Let's talk about why, right? Obviously, you had a medical episode, and I want you to go into detail because I don't want to mess it up. But you had a medical episode, which changed your life dramatically. And although the beard is not the reason, but it kind of is. Let's dive into that moment where you had this medical episode, and what was it like?
Yeah, well, so I had kind of figured out in my life, 2019, I'm living a high life. Everything's great. I'm speaking around the world and traveling as a father with my 3 kids and my wife. I got to take my kids to Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and we've gotten to live in some of these places for months and be with the culture. And so we're doing all those things. And 2020 was going to be even bigger. And then within 2 weeks, as we all know what happened in 2020, all those things went away. And I had enough online, Justin, so I was able to pivot pretty well. but we still weren't hitting the revenue marks. And I had staff, and I still do, and I didn't want to let them go. Something inside of me was like, don't lay anyone off. And the stresses were real. And so I'm leading up to what I had was Guillain-Barré Syndrome, and everyone that I met so far, and maybe it's just coincidence or synchronicities, but they all had some level of stress in their life. And I remember coming out during that period out of my office, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again. I'm working more. And then my wife would say, well, remember this and remember that. You're not doing half that. I was like, okay, you're right. I'm just going through this moment. So, but the stress was real. I had built a lifestyle, and it put extra pressure that wasn't there because everything just ran smooth, right? So then fast forward, July 2021. So now I'm 18 months into this whole pandemic issue, and I go and get 7 speaking engagements in 4 different states, which I normally wouldn't take, knowing my lifestyle choices, but I did it because I'm like, I'm back. And I don't know what it was, if it's all, because we don't know exactly, like the neurologist and all that, there's no like confirmed thing, but we do know there was stress involved. We do know that I wasn't eating my normal diet, and they have University of Massachusetts has research that glyphosate, like high levels, which is in Roundup, can also create neuro things like Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré, even ALS. They're like, and that stuff's being, I don't want to get all into that, and you can choose what you want to do with your show, but some stuff gets taken down when you say any of this stuff out loud.
Yeah,
But,
dude, by the way, you can talk about anything you want. Like, I'm open to all that stuff.
Yeah, well, basically, I won't, go through, but I eat all organic, and we even lost 4 pregnancies earlier in life between my son and my daughters, and we were in a rural area because I had some success at a young age, and I bought acres, and then they're buzzing our property with planes for the neighboring farms. As soon as we moved out of there, we had 2 more babies, healthy as can be, no problems, and the doctors were telling us to stop trying. They told us, don't even try to have babies. You can't. Well, as soon as we got away from the pesticides, so I know I'm a little, like you could say, I have a lower tolerance, or I guess you would say, of it, because that already happened to me. And then I think it happened again in this instance. And then I was paralyzed completely, arms, legs, face, everything, which comes to the beard full circle. I couldn't shave my hands and everything. And I never had ever grown a beard this big. So come September this year, in about 3-4 months, or what is that, 3 months? That's going to be 2 years since I have not shaved my facial hair, which is crazy. And it's also been a learning experience, Justin, because, I've been working, as I told you, with CEOs. And so when I started working again this year, I was getting on camera, and I noticed a moment of self-conscious. I said, oh man, I don't look, the part. I'm not a clean cut corporate guy. And I pressed the Zoom button because it was too late to turn back, and I showed up, and the person said, whoa, what wisdom am I going to gain today? And I went with it and like let all that go. And if I'm at my point in my life through this, I think it wasn't, I guess there's so much to talk about on this, and I'll let you guide me on this, what you would like from the show today. But being paralyzed was an absolute blessing. And I can say right now, which sounds crazy, I mean, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, even myself, but the fact that it happened, I would not want to go back if I had a magic wand and take this away, because I like who I am now. And as an easy example that's fast, I used to say, do what you do best and delegate the rest. And I help businesses do all of that. Now coming out of this, I'm like, you have to delegate 100%. And I'm still going to work. I don't see myself as a retiring person, but I am going to make sure that everything in my company works without me. So if something does happen to me, or I want to go on a sabbatical, this company will run. And I'm happy to say my company survived me being gone for over 18 months. So remember that whole thing I said earlier in this talk, is that I was worried about letting go of my staff. Well, that guttural reaction that I kept them, even though it hurt, saved me, because they ran my company without me while I was in the hospital. Right. So isn't that wild? I mean, it's like spiritual in a way, but to me, it's like connecting all the dots, if that makes sense.
No, totally, man. And so it's funny. I want you to explain Guillain-Barré a little bit, just so people that are listening understand. So I actually I'm very aware of it. So when I was 16, my dad got Guillain-Barré.
Wow.
Not to your extent. I just remember he lost feeling in his legs.
Okay.
And like he was literally, I remember we were in the hospital and he was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed and they were poking his legs with needles,
Yeah.
going, "Can you feel this?" And he's like, "No." Like he could feel nothing, and he had a much quicker recovery than you. But talk a little bit about what is Guillain-Barré, because I think it's still a rarity at this point.
Yeah, and unfortunately they say it's rising, but it is still rare even in its rise. But what Guillain-Barré, like Bell's palsy or ALS, they're in a similar suite. It attacks the nervous system, so it's an autoimmune response for Guillain-Barré. So Guillain-Barré specifically, we're talking about. It's an over response, and what it does, there's a myelin. They call it the myelin sheath. Think of it; it's the insulation that's over your nerve. And so it happens to be that insulation, but also happens to be the telephone wire from your brain to the body. So that's why your dad couldn't feel anything, because literally the telephone wire from your leg to your brain is off. So you
Wow.
can't tell it to move. You can't feel any response from it. Think of a two-way communication. It's severed. So the brain can't receive information from the leg anymore, and the brain can't send signals to the leg anymore. So that happened on my whole body. And the worst is that it goes into your lung muscles and then you can't breathe and then you die. And some
Wow.
people have had to be on breathing machines and all that. I didn't believe my lungs were affected until after, when I could breathe. I was like, oh my gosh, I can breathe easier. So it was affecting, but it didn't completely shut down my lung muscles, thankfully. But the rest of my body, so it was down to that. It was down to, like, if anything else gets paralyzed, it's going to be my essential organs, because the rest of my body, like, for example, I couldn't blink. I couldn't
Wow.
blink. They had to tape my eyes shut, because if you don't blink, your eyes don't water. If they don't water, your cornea can tear and then you could be blind. So that's the craziness. And once the doctors couldn't pinpoint exactly how this happened to me, I then I turned all my attention to healing. And because of all my mindset, when they told me that my myelin was gone, so from what I understand, and I'm not a scholar on this, but the difference between Guillain-Barré and ALS is that Guillain-Barré, you can grow back your myelin. ALS, they have not found a way. So then basically your body shuts down until you can't you can't do anything anymore, and
Right.
including breathe. So once I learned that, I just remember several things. Like, there's lots of things I've learned from neurolinguistics programming, family systemic patterns, but I think the one that came in my mind loud, because I was in the hospital, and I've never been hospitalized, by the way, my whole
Wow.
life, almost 5 decades here, and never been never had this happen. I remember the Miracle Man from, I don't know if you're, he had a bit part in The Secret, so some people remember him from that. But he, in 1981, it was March of 1981, he crashed his plane, a small plane. He was a pilot, and completely, his body was mangled, like broken hips, legs, shattered, smashed lungs. The doctors are telling the family in the room, they're like, there's nothing we can do. He'll be on a
Hmm.
machine the rest of his life. The best thing you can do is unplug the man. And in that, he could blink. And so he was blinking codes. And luckily there was, like, I think the nurse, if I remember correctly, was like a military nurse. So they started using blinking, and wrote down code, like a Morse code.
Wow.
In fact, it might have been Morse code, but he was blinking, I will walk out of this hospital by Christmas. And
Wow.
he just sat there, and you can still see him. I looked it up since all this happened to me, and he's still alive. And right now, still alive in
Crazy.
2023. And he said, the doctors are basically, you're dead, you're mangled, you're destroyed. There's no way around it. He regrew his lungs like a lizard regrows their tail. These are things, like, it's to this day, right now, with all our science, they still can't understand how this man in 1981 did this. So when I saw it in there, bring back to me in the hospital bed, I'm like, and I couldn't see, so I had already been practicing meditation. So I couldn't have fixed it up in a better way, in some way. Like, I'm paralyzed, I can't see, they blindfold me, tape my eyes shut. I had to go inward. So I basically went into a deep meditation, and I basically told my mind, okay, regrow my myelin. I just pictured I just made it up in my mind, but I was picturing it regrowing, and I just focused and focused on that. And to that, I'll stop myself here for, to see where we go with this, but because there's so many angles. But one thing I also did that I want to include in my healing is that I didn't take all the pharmaceuticals. I think it's important because I talked to a lot of other Guillain-Barré people that are my age, and they're like 5, 6 years of recovery. I just met a man a month ago that got this in '04, and he still can't walk right now.
Wow.
So the thing that I found was I meditated. It was my mindset, which I could dig deeper on if you want. And then the other side was I didn't take the pharmaceuticals. They wanted like a dozen drugs in me at the hospital. And I did a couple things they asked me to do, and then I went numb. Like my wife's there, and they're like, physical therapy's here, which is my favorite part, to like try to move my arm or whatever. And I was a vegetable. I was just like, I can't do anything. I'm just sleeping. So I said, no more. I don't care how painful it is. I was in gratitude when my leg is hurting like Charlie horse and every muscle in your leg. I'm like, I can feel it. Like to the point of your father, I like
Yeah.
feeling my leg, even if it was pain, was better because I could keep my mind and keep, meditating versus just going into comatose. If
Yeah.
that
So
that makes sense.
obviously, I really believe that the mind is the most powerful drug that we have, right? It can make you sick, it can make you healthy, it can heal you, as you're saying, right? Like obviously the Miracle Man story is amazing. Your story is amazing. To hear somebody from 2004 who's not walking now, like let's talk a little bit about some of those practices, right? Like obviously there is meditation, but there's a constant need to be in that type of state, because as you struggle with pain, as you deal with frustration, as you do all these things, and I imagine all those emotions came up because emotions are real. How
Yes.
did you keep yourself in that state, even when you were frustrated, angry, pissed off, whatever? How were you able to continue to stay in that lane?
Yeah, and even to the point where am I gonna die? Like, is this the end? Like, I'd be lying if it didn't, if I said it, that didn't come into my mind. I mean, you're like one by one within 7 days, from being normal in my book to not being able to move.
Wow.
Is so yes, were there dark moments? Absolutely. Did I freak out? Were there tears shed? Absolutely. Was I freaked out? My kids are still in their teens, and I want to be a dad. I want to live. I have a lot of ambition. So those things were going through my mind. And I think, the one thing, and I know it's really popular these days, but since the early 2000s, I've always said, choose gratitude and create freedom. And that came from not being grateful. Like there's a period of time where I felt like a loser. I felt like I wasn't good enough, and I wasn't grateful is what I found. Once I found gratitude, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a lot to be grateful for. It turned my attention. And so that's what I had to do. So what is the mechanism? Because I'll say I had dark days, but I never had dark weeks. And the way that I did that is, I believe that what we focus on, this has also been said many times, where our focus goes, energy flows. And I want to go as far as saying words matter, like spelling. I don't think it's a coincidence that when we say spelling is putting letters together to make words, is also the same as someone thinks when a witch is casting a spell. But we're all witches and wizards, and it's not something evil. You're casting spells every day by what you say and what you think about. And I've been well aware of this. When I was in my darkest moments, I was pouring more darkness on it. And what do you think you're going to have happen if we believe any bit? If anybody listening to this believes in manifestation at any level, then how can you not start noticing what we're projecting? So sometimes people meditate for 5 minutes every day, or they go and have an affirmation like, I'm wealthy, but then the rest of the day they're telling themselves, oh, I suck, I don't make enough money, this bill just came, damn it, and we're just like, that's all part of it. So it's like living the meditation, if
Yeah.
you will. And the tricky part of that, but it's not hard, is you've got to start being self-aware. You got to start noticing that you're doing this to yourself. Maybe even your people closest to you. I know you like to talk about that. Who are you hanging out with? Have people that are going to call you out on this, because sometimes we don't notice. But ultimately, I had to, every time I thought of the darkness, like, oh my gosh, am I going to die? Then I had to literally say in my mind, that's not what I want. And it's like, oh yeah, that's not what I want. Okay, what do I want? I want to be healed. I want to be healthy. Okay, I want to go beyond healed. I want to walk with my kids. I want to run. I want to pick up my 18-year-old boy in my arms. I want to be able to do that standing up. Then I want to, and I said, I just started picturing all those things, Justin. And then you change. Now I'm changing the suggestion. And I'm finding, even in the painful moments, I'm going back to gratitude. You know, like I said, with my leg hurting so bad when that happened, I just thought how grateful I am that I could feel it again.
Mm.
And so I just let that transition. So I would go from pain and darkness to transition to the gratitude, then transition to what would I like? And I just did that over and over. And you have to keep doing it over and over and over until the dominant thoughts are the positive thoughts that I would like to have in my thing. And it's quite simple. It's just a matter of practicing it. And I want to say I've been practicing this pretty much since 2008. So what another blessing, like if I would have had Guillain-Barré in 2004, I can't tell you that I would have made it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, it was a bad case I had. And if I went into complete darkness and I just went on all the meds, I think who knows if I would have ever came out of it. I can't tell you if I would or not.
Yeah. And so it's so important, no matter what's happening in your life, to start practicing it now, because it is a tool and a muscle that you build over time, because it's not easy, right? Like it is when you hit those dark moments, that's when, you know, it's easy to be grateful when everything's going well, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what they say. And then obviously when things go to shit, can you still be grateful? Can you still be grateful for the breath in your lungs? And
Well,
you very
and to
much so.
add to that real quick, this is what I live by now. Gratitude to me equals, so the definition for me is appreciating all results. Because
Mm,
I have to bring it to that because people might be listening to this and say, Guillain-Barré, are you crazy? Like that you're grateful for this? Well, because it changed my life and it's guidance. So when crap happens, don't think of it as like horrible. Oh, why did this happen to me? It's like, no, I was given this so I would be redirected. So I believe life will tap you and tap you. If you're not, if you're watching, you can avoid the slaps. So it's tap, tap, slap, tap, tap, slap. And I got slapped. That's
yeah.
just the way it is. And now the direction that's changed from that slap, I am absolutely grateful for. And once you have that a few times, then it's easier to be grateful because you have to, instead of saying, oh crap, this happened, it's like, oh, what should I be paying attention to? Why did I get a flat tire today? Am I supposed to be going to this place? Maybe I'm not
Hmm.
even supposed to show up at this meeting. Maybe I'm going on the wrong road.
Yeah, dude, that is, and it's so true. And I am the first one to be frustrated when driving. And then I always try and go back to like, you know, there's a reason this person's driving insanely slow in front of me. I don't know what that reason is, but it's saving my life, or, you know, I just missed the intersection where there's an accident or whatever the case may be. And you try and get yourself into that sense. Now you'd mentioned this thing with this battle with Guillain-Barré changed your life. I want to get into that. How did it change your life when you look at your life now versus then? Because I imagine it's an internal change more than anything else.
Well, yeah, it was everything. I would say physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and my physical location and everything. So it changed because at this point, and this, I hope sharing this changes some folks' mindset because, you know, waiting for a catastrophe, you know, like someone dies in your life or you have a medical episode like I did, then you start becoming aware. So I've always said, and you probably remember me saying this all those years ago, design your life and then build your business around that. That's
Yeah.
been my thing. Well, now I have to add a big precursor. What are the experiences that you want? Because I think we get fooled by the design by other things, right? Like outer things like, oh, I should have a house. I should get married and have kids. That's what all my friends are doing, right? So we start designing based on some other criteria other than our true heart. So I think what the first step is, being paralyzed completely broke me down to the essence. And you say, like, what the hell am I doing? Right? Like, I mean, if you want to go on a picnic with your family at the river, then why in my mind, I'm an ambitious man, you know that. So like there's times in my life I'm like, oh, well, we'll just buy a retreat center on a river and we have to have all these assets so that I can picnic on the river with my family. No, you can go to a river. There's public space. And it's so like real things like that, that I would be in a delusion that I had to have all, more assets to have these things. Were already fading in my life, but now it was drastic. It was like, nope, no, 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 no. Why do we absolutely want this? What do we really want? If dad's going to die, and this is the other thing, tomorrow's not promised. One day I'm sitting on my steps, looking out at the forest where I lived, having a cup of cacao like I have in my hand right now while we're drinking while I'm talking to you. And then the next minute I fall down. I mean, so so if we want to nitpick it to like one thing, it's like, okay, if it's life or death, what am I going to do with my life? And that's how I wake up every day now, Justin. It's like, okay, what am I going to do? And then take those experiences and put that into my life on my daily. Okay, if I want to be with my kids more, okay, I'm going to go on walks every day with my daughter because she's one of my daughters. I have 2 daughters and a son. She loves going on walks with me. So we're going to start doing that more and more. Why would I miss a day? Right? Like things like that become like a must. And then also it got me to exit California. I decided I was, spending gobs and gobs of money. And at that time, when I decided this, as soon as I could walk with a cane, we had already thought, because I was on a retreat facility and I run retreats and have executives come there. And, the operation is like 30 plus million in California. We were looking at Oregon, then you could go down to like 15 million. We started looking at other states. And now this is before I'm paralyzed. Now that I'm paralyzed, I'm like, what the hell? Like, who cares? Why do I need that? Like, I mean, really, like, am I going to, and now if it comes to me, now here's the crazy thing. I ended up in Oklahoma. I'm north of Tulsa. And we're in Cherokee Nation and we're working with indigenous tribes here, and it feels really good. We're helping people. And then I won't be able to share all of it, but we can start dissecting. But so many things, like over a dozen blessings have come in my life that I wanted, that years earlier, I can tell you I worked way too hard and it didn't work. And then now it's just being handed to me. It's like, oh, Steve, you're here. Oh, here. So it goes back to that guidance. I will tell you, before Guillain-Barré, I wouldn't have ever, I'm born in California. I love the coast of California. I would never, ever, ever leave. But this, now I said, wait a minute. Is this really my priority? It's not. It's not anymore.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. And it's really going back to just listening to your intuition, right? There was clearly something pulling you even before the Guillain-Barré, and this was your final push. Now, obviously, let's be honest, California was a mass exodus either way, but
yeah,
Oklahoma,
I mean, there's multiple reasons, but yeah.
Oklahoma, I've heard amazing things, and very similar to what you're talking about. I don't know if it's the energy, I don't know what it is, but I love that you're doing huge things in that space. Now, you talked about, we're not promised tomorrow. So I want to ask you a question. I don't know if I asked it back when you were on in 2016, but I ask from time to time, and it's a real straightforward question. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that sentence be?
I'm giving it a thought here. I know what it is, but I'm trying to get the right words to say it smoothly, but I think it will be, I mean, the first thing that comes, I'm going to say it. He lived with purpose. I mean, and then there's legs to that, right? Like, he was a father on purpose, not by it happened. I mean, I'm being a father actively, like that. I'm being fatherly, not just that I have offspring, that I'm actually being there, showing up, that I'm showing up as a husband, that I'm showing up as a neighbor. And this comes back to the Oklahoma thing. Like, this is the first time in many, many years that I can feel neighborly. Like, in California, the hustle bustle is real, and it's rare that you know your neighbor. Here, if you say, "How are you?" in Oklahoma, be ready to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, it's that kind of town. So it's slowing down to live. It goes back to the whole thing. So, yeah, I guess that if I did a secondary after saying all that, it would be, he's slowed down enough to live well. Yeah, that would be another one. But it's like that. I want to live now, instead of saying I'm going to make a gobs of money and then I'm going to live. That's just absolutely not okay.
Yeah. Now, obviously, your whole entire mindset and the idea of what success is has shifted so much in the last couple of years. So I want to ask you this two-part question. The first part is, what is your definition of success now? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
So, success to me is really living in the experiences that I want with others that I love. I guess that would be it, and I love a lot of people. So that's it. And then how do I do that? I start my mornings with me. A lot that people think that being selfish is like really bad, but if I actually take that and I own that, I'm whole. And then I can give more, right? It's like that if I fill my cup first, then I can give water to many people.
Wow.
Then the next step is that I have time with my family. So after my meditation practices, so I do a whole series, not a subcategory, it's like meditate, read, journal, I'm doing, and movement is a big part, especially since I couldn't move, like having physical activity. So all that happens. Then I'll typically have a cup of cacao with my wife, looking out into, we have forests behind us. Again, I can't get away from the trees, brother. So even in Oklahoma, I'm here in the forest, and we're just like having some sort of morning beverage, a tea or cacao, and looking out and just being with her and kind of looking and seeing the day. Almost every day is that way with the family, and having that. And then the third is opening up to others. So I guess it's really like, if you think of it as like a circle, it's like me, then my immediate family, and then I'm open to the world. So then usually in the afternoon, I will start helping. And I'm only working part-time now, like half days, 4 days a week, because I'm also writing another book. So it's Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. Wednesday, I take no electronics. I do a deeper spiritual day, like the first half of the day. And then I go into music, because I'm also learning music. And then I know this is way bigger answer than you want, but then
No,
I
man,
do
you're good.
volunteer work. Then I do volunteer work. So that's kind of how my weeks work right now. And then just enjoy more family on the weekends. And so basically, it's hard to say. So the whole thing is totally designed, basically. So I'm getting everything I want out of my life.
I love it. And I love what you said about being selfish. So it's something I say often. I had a big realization in my life, which was being selfish was the most selfless thing anybody can do, because it is taking care of yourself first, right? And if you don't take care of yourself, then what happens, right? Then
Yeah.
you have a better chance of not being around for those people. And it's just such a great realization once you accept it and you don't apologize for it and you do what you got to do. So I'm so glad you shared that. So I want to ask you this. You're talking a lot about your spiritual journey now. What is spirituality to you, and how do you connect to that source?
Well, I grew up Catholic. I'm Italian descent, so family was heavily Catholic as they came from Italy, and we're here in the States. And then when I was younger, I moved to non-denominational, and then I moved away from the church, and even questioned all of it. And then it was an inward thing. So as I started to meditate and such, it was just like being with myself. But I think to me now, like I even shied away from using the word God for a period while I was discovering myself. But God is to me everything, right? It's the whole universe. It's where we're all connected. And some people go, oh, well, if you're a complete atheist, like how do you understand when you think of someone and then they call you? And this happens frequently, right? There's something in the ether bigger than
For
all of
sure.
us that connects all of us. And when you tap into that, it's tapping into infinite intelligence and all these things. And as an example, I got to travel a lot of the world, like I told you. So in Barcelona, if you ever get there, go see Gaudi's work. He's a famous architect from the turn of the century at the 1900s. And we were going through and seeing some of his architecture, and it's like amazing engineering beyond his time. And I leaned over to my wife as the tour guide was taking us to the tour, and I said, oh my gosh, this guy was switched on. He was definitely meditating or praying. And then right then the tour guide said, and he was a very religious man. He would go to church 3 times a day for an hour each and pray. He was downloading like Da Vinci. This is what
Yeah.
they talk about. And you look at Thomas Edison, he would go between sleeping and awake with ball bearings. Like it would drop into a metal cup so it would wake him up. So there's been so many people studying these things. And then, and so I tell you my whole quest because it's a very mixed, eclectic thing. Because now I've studied yogis and what do they do in India and different places, and even looking back to the Bible, finding myself look back to some of the biblical terms and such. And you know what? It's all coming to one thing: knowing that there is something, that we are all connected in a bigger consciousness. And when you do that, this is where the guidance can come. So all these things that we call intuition is, I think, is you could also define as divine direction. And so whatever you want to believe. So I think it's more universal. I'm not telling people you have to believe this one way. I just believe that if you are being aware and having enough self-time that you're listening to what's coming out of you, in a way you could say that's God, because you're being told, you're getting an essence of what to do, what's good for me. And this can go to feelings, Justin, as simple as that. If you don't want to think in a spiritual way, you have feelings for a reason. Just like if you put your hand towards a hot fire, your body's going to want to pull away. Well, guess what? If you feel bad, there's a reason. Your body is saying, no, hey, go somewhere else. And then when you feel joy and bliss, you're like, yes, give me more. That is not for a coincidence. That is because that is your guidance. And I think we've been taught, stop being a little boy, stop crying like a little girl, or whatever people say. And all those things where they took away feelings in those words from our children, who are us. We are adults in our child body, and we were told to not feel. And so that's what I would say. I guess it's a big roundabout way to say this. Spirituality to me is allowing yourself to feel so you can hear the truth, whatever that truth is for you, and let that guidance be real, because it is. And I found when I listen to the guidance, my life comes with ease and joy and bliss. And when I tried to force it the way I thought it should, it hurt and it was hard. And if I only would have known that that's what it was telling me, don't go on this road. Does that, I know I don't have it in the summed up words. I think it was Mark Twain said, I would have wrote a shorter letter if I had more time. So I think I'm in that category right now.
No, dude, I love it. And I love your description of all of it. And it's so true. Like, I'm like thinking like, when can I get to Oklahoma so we can hang out? Because I have a very similar sense of what spirituality is. What I always say is, you have to believe in two things. One, there's a higher power, whatever you want to define it as. You can call it God, source, universe, whatever. And the second part is, you have to understand that we're all energy and we're all connected. And the idea within spirituality and what you do in your meditations is to make sure that the energy is flowing with you instead of against you. Yes. And that's the power of it.
That I love. And that's proven in science now too. So because it's all molecules, it's all atoms, electrons and neutrons. And, so when it says in the Bible that you're made in the likeness of God, it is literally talking about energy, not that there's a physical, person up there. It's energy, and we're a part of that. So I'm with you 100%. And I welcome you to visit for sure. It would be beautiful.
Absolutely, man. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get more information? I noticed you said you're writing a book. Do we have a timeline on that? What's all the good information?
Well, so I have a series that's going to start coming out, and it's going to be the Wow Methods. And so it's all the wow methods to have a wow life, so in business, so there's going to be business things like how to have a wow schedule, how to have wow clients, like everything comes back to wow, like how are we living the best? And then I am working on my big kind of, I guess you call it opus, and it's going to be called Choose Gratitude, Create Freedom. That's the title, because that's also one of my trademarks. And so why not take my trademark and write a book? Because as I started to write the Guillain-Barré story, I'm like, wait a minute. You have to know this little boy. You have to know this man that went through all these troubles to get to this point that he could recover from Guillain-Barré in 22 and, right now, 22 months, pretty much being the, who I am now. So
I love it.
So those are coming. And the answer, it's stevenapolitan.com. So SteveNapolitan.com, main way. And then you can get to whatever social media. We also have a podcast, More Business, More Life. And I just talk about this, like, how do we have more business and more life at the same time with 3 co-hosts? So there's 4 hosts on the show. Again, that comes back to delegating. Now, if I'm absent, my show goes on, brother, because guess what? My show went on a hiatus the minute I went into the hospital. So now I have 4 hosts. So if one of us misses, we still go.
I love it. I love it, man. And it's amazing. And so it's funny, like, you're somebody who lives what you preach, right? And so if people go back and listen in the 2016 episode. I haven't listened to the full thing yet, but you mentioned the wow then as well, right? And so these are the things that you live by, and I love hearing it, man. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. You probably forget from 7 years ago, but we were asking that same damn question 7 years ago. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, the question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Wow. It's so tough, but because of where I am, I'm going to have to say the Guillain-Barré episode. I mean, hands down, it was over a decade worth of growth in 1 year of being paralyzed. I mean, like, seriously, the decisions I made, if I didn't have Guillain-Barré, I would have had to probably be in my 60s before I would have had the wisdom to make the tenacity of direct decisions that were drastic, if you would call. Like, from looking outside, people say, wow, this guy's making drastic movements with this family. I fast forward. So I think, out of all, and I've been in personal growth since I was 31, like, now decades, this is hands down the biggest growth moment, is having this happen in my life.
I love it, man. Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to come back on the show, man. I'm truly grateful that 7 years later, we can still have conversations like this and we hit record and people listen, because what you say makes an impact, man. So thank you so much for being you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show and being curious about my life and being willing to share it. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you do. Keep doing it, because it is an inspiration for many people.
Thanks, brother.